This is the Live to Inspire podcast with me, your host, Mo Yunus. Welcome to the Live to Inspire podcast with me, your host, Mo Yunus. Today I have John Borland, who is an ex-footballer, professional footballer who played for Burnley Football Club, but unfortunately suffered a back injury back in 2001. So before I get into any of the things I've got written down here, can you just correct me, sorry, if any of the information, if I've got anything wrong? Because it does say on the internet that you're 34, but I don't think that's correct, is it?
No, it's not. No, you took 10 years off me there, mate. I am 44 years old. Definitely not 34, but I'll take 34, mate. I'm really happy with that.
Yeah, I think, yeah, I was guessing you'd take that. I did think that was wrong. But yeah, like I said, you're an ex-professional footballer. You unfortunately suffered a back injury back in 2001. But before we get into any of that, I'd like to ask you one question, which I ask all my guests. What is the biggest challenge you have in life right now?
Good question, mate. Really good question. I think for me, the biggest challenge or the ongoing challenge that I have, probably similar to a lot of other people actually, is trying to live in the moment, trying to be really present in every moment in life. Because I just think it's something I've been working on for years and years, and I'm definitely getting better and better at. But I just think our world culture wants us to be constantly planning, constantly thinking about the next thing. And I've just for years now just been trying to be in a place where I'm slowing down, trying to live in the moment, soak it all in. So that's almost like my ongoing challenge to myself, I would say.
Because you are doing quite well with yourself now. You've got your own podcast show. You're an author. So you are doing things. You're a life coach as well. Sorry, so you are doing things to get your mind off whatever's going on, and I respect you for that because, I read about you, and I'd like to mention actually as well, I was on your podcast show. I've been on your podcast show, haven't I?
Yeah, you were, mate, and it was a cracking episode, to be honest, Mo. Just you talking about your life and your experiences. It was unbelievably inspiring.
Yeah, well, I don't think I'll be as good as you. You're a great host. I don't think I'll be as good as that, but I'm getting there. But yeah. So before we get into, you've answered my question, the main question I wanted to ask you. So we're gonna take you back, take us back to your footballing career. Can you just tell us a bit about that?
Yeah. It sounds very grand, when people describe me as an ex-professional footballer, and people sort of go, "Oh, whoa, that must have been amazing." The reality for me is I was a professional footballer for a very short period of time. I grew up loving football, loving it. Absolutely. I wanted to be a pro footballer. That's all I wanted to do. I wanted to go as far as I could with it. So I was really, really driven when I was younger. And then I suppose I'd just been quite successful in sort of schoolboy football, youth football, things like that. It had gone really well. And then the wheels came off very quickly for me, very, very quickly. You mentioned my back injury before, but the reality is my professional football career was already over before my back injury happened. I was playing semi-professional at that time. But yeah, it was, I've got kind of bittersweet memories of it, Mo, to be honest. It was amazing. Bits of it were amazing, but also bits of it just didn't really live up to the sort of the impression that society gives us of being a pro footballer, like as if it's just this amazing, glamorous thing. And the reality was it wasn't. It's quite a tough, hard, nasty at times world. It can be brilliant and it can be brutal all at the same time. So for me, yeah, I only ended up playing a handful of first team appearances for Burnley, a couple of appearances for Scunthorpe United, and then I dropped into non-league with Accrington Stanley and different teams like that. And honestly, like, people often don't believe me when I say this, but my life was better when I went part-time as a footballer, when I was a semi-pro rather than full-time. My life was more interesting. It was more varied. Because the thing with being a footballer is you've got to have a one-track mind. Like everything's about football, the way you eat, the way you sleep, the way you like your social life, everything's geared towards that. And it kind of has to be. And when I stopped being a pro and ended up, playing part-time and non-league, suddenly the world opened up. I was like, oh, wow, it's amazing. Look at all these different things I can do and places I can go and things that I can get involved in. So I actually preferred life after professional football, which if you'd have asked me at 15 and 16, I'd have never believed that could be the case, but it was true for me. It gave me a chance to explore other things, do other things in life. So it was weirdly, my professional football career finishing was weirdly a blessing in disguise when I look back.
Wow, that's amazing that you've said that, because like you said, whenever someone thinks about being a professional footballer, it's, people think you're living the dream, aren't you? You know, the things you're doing. I was just thinking, do you not think it's because of the time you were a professional footballer? Because I know, as we all know now, on this day and age, footballers get paid a whole lot more money than they did back then, and their lifestyle is much more glamorous than the footballers back then as well. Do you think that has a part, or?
Well, I think football has changed, hasn't it? To the point where, even just watching the game, I struggle at times now to watch football. I sort of half enjoy it and it half does me head in because just, the VAR stuff and tackling. I know I sound like an old man with this, but I almost it makes me sound like football was better back in my day. It makes me sound like an old man. But in reality, there were some bits of football that were better back then and some bits that aren't. But I think there's pros and cons with this, mate, because I reckon, obviously, there's more money involved, there's more prestige, there's more exposure. But at the same time, I'm not convinced the money makes people happy. Money does, if you've got nothing, having some money makes you happy to a point. But beyond that, you get to a point where I don't think it does. I don't think it makes that big a difference. But then also what's come with this is that footballers now, like with all the social media stuff, all the exposure, the pressure's built and built and built and built. So I think it's probably even harder and more difficult to be in that world than it was when I was younger. Because, I could go out places and do stuff without any fear of somebody taking a photograph of me and plastering it all over social media. Whereas now, footballers must be thinking like that all the time. They must be conscious of almost every step they take, every move they make. And that's a really high pressure place in which to live your life. Now, I know, for the top footballers, they're celebrities, aren't they? They'll probably get used to that. And the reality is, I don't know, being a footballer lower down, you've still got to be a bit careful in the towns in which the clubs are that you play for and different things like that. So I reckon, I don't know, mate, maybe it was easier then. Maybe it was actually better then. I don't know, but maybe these days, the money and the prestige makes it better for people. I don't know, but it's not something I would want, mate. There's no desire in me to live some sort of lifestyle where everywhere you go, people are looking at you, wanting a piece of you. Well, that whole celebrity stuff, nah, I wouldn't. If somebody offered me that, I wouldn't have it. No chance at all. I just don't. I think it looks good, but I'm not sure the reality of it is that it is good.
Yeah, people don't think that deep into it. I think that's one of the things we just see on social media. We don't really see the background of a footballer's life, do we? We don't know what they're going through, and because I'm friends with some of the footballers. Obviously, a lot of people know, and I know it's some of them have told me how hard it is. Just going outside sometimes, you've got people taking pictures, and you've got stories made up from the newspapers and all sorts. And I think that's happening a lot more now to footballers and even celebrities in general than it was back when you were a footballer.
Yeah, I totally agree. And the other thing, Mo, is it's almost like they can't complain about it. So they can't, the society wouldn't let them say it's really tough being a footballer, because people would go, well, look at the money you're getting paid and look at the lifestyle you've got. I can't believe you're moaning. You're living the dream. And yet at times the reality is that whatever dream you live in becomes your normal. That becomes normal for people. So, and they have no permission to ever complain or ever to say, do you know what, I'm having a tough time. And I think that's difficult as well, because everybody should have permission to say, I'm having a tough time here. I'm struggling with something.
Mm-hmm.
And yet almost we've made it so the footballers can't complain, because it's like, well, you're getting paid all this money. And even if they start to say we shouldn't be getting this level of abuse, people go, well, you're getting paid all that money. And that's not right. Like, no matter what somebody's getting paid, they shouldn't be getting that level of abuse. And if you think about it, if I was doing my job every day, whilst somebody else was trying to stop me doing my job every day, I wouldn't do as good a job. And then people, if there were thousands of people watching me do my job, while somebody else is trying to stop me doing my job, well, people would be saying, oh, we haven't performed very well today, John. Or why? Well, you're not performing as well as you did a year ago. And imagine the scrutiny and the pressure of that. And yet often football fans don't understand that that's going on. It's not just about somebody performing well. There's somebody else trying to stop you from performing well. And you're being watched by thousands of people, millions of people sometimes. And then you're getting stick for your performance. Mate, the pressure. I mean, would I want that? Would I want my performance at my job every day to be watched by all those people and scrutinized and unpicked whilst someone else is trying to stop me doing it as well? I just think sometimes we have a fantasy view of that kind of world. And you mentioned pop stars, right? And people look at pop stars and go, it must be amazing being a pop star. It must be horrible. It must be horrible. Touring the world all the time, living out of a bag, being in hotel after hotel, singing the same song again and again and again. Oh, mate, like they do gigs and everyone just wants them to sing their famous song, and they must get bored of that song. Do you know?
Yeah, I've thought of that myself, actually. Like, a lot of the footballers and the celebrities, they don't see their families much as well. And I don't think people realise that, that the sacrifices they do make. Yes, they're getting paid whatever they're getting paid, but people tend to think, oh, it's okay because they're getting paid that amount of money. Like I probably wouldn't have known or thought about much of this until, I've been friends with footballers and I've heard them say themselves, it isn't all what, like exactly what you said, it isn't all glamorous. There are, lows and cons to being a footballer.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting you've said that, because, when I read about your back injury, I did think to myself, well, his life probably went or must have went downhill after that. He probably must have, went into depression, or he must have felt really down about it. But, you've come out and said, from then, from not being a professional footballer, your life actually got a little better. But, I've read obviously as well that you've had highs in your career. You've captained the Burnley youth team against Man City in the Lancaster Cup final. So things like that, you probably do have in the back of your head and you do smile about it. But then, like you said, you do have the cons to it. So
yeah, and I've got some great memories from football, great memories from all the different levels of football that I played at. Football, has done a lot for me in my life. I've learned a lot through it. Just in terms of like digging deep in life, battling through things, all these kind of things that you learn on a sports field, I think you can apply to life, learning to work as a team, different leadership skills, all those types of things. I've got a lot to be grateful to sport for. I think it's a wonderful thing. I also think being that focused on sport as a teenager helped to keep me focused, stop me making negative decisions in life as well. It gave me a purpose and a reason in my younger years as well, which I think is really important. So football, and I have got some great memories from it. Like I really, really have. I look back on it with a lot of fondness. I think when my back injury happened, I was 24 and I went to see a specialist, and he basically said to me, you can't play football at this level anymore. Like that, it's just not going to happen. And I can remember at that point sitting in the car park, coming out of his office, coming out of the centre that I'd seen him in, sitting in the car park and crying and thinking, I can't believe that's it. And I was crying because it was over. You know, it was almost like it was such a sudden ending for me that I couldn't play football at that level anymore. And I was playing non-league at the time. I think it would have been different if I'd have been a pro. I think it would have hit me harder. But the reality was at the time, football was a part of my life, not the whole of my life. And I'm really grateful for that. That came because I had all these other things going on in life to focus on. And actually, 3 years later, I started to play again a little bit low, just with my mates, really. And then I started to think, I feel like I can play here. I feel like I can. So I went back into non-league at that point and ended up playing another 3 or 4 seasons. And I suppose kind of proving the specialists wrong. But maybe those 3 years out kind of healed and helped me. I'm not quite sure. But yeah, it didn't hit me that hard. It hit initially. I had a few days, maybe a week, where I was like, what do I fill this part of my life with at that point? But very, very quickly, because I had other focuses on my life, other things that were more important for me. I think if it had been my full-time job, that'd have been really difficult, really, really difficult.
Yeah, wow. Well, I think a lot of the listeners and all viewers will be very interested in what you've just said, because you know, unless you're friends with the footballers or you live that life, you don't know what you've just said, that you don't know about that. But yeah, so you know, today, in today's this year, 2021, we're in now. You've become a life coach. You've got your own podcast show. You're an author. So how did these things come along?
Very gradually, mate. To be honest, I kind of all kicked off a long time ago for me. This, so I've been a professional professional life coach. I don't really like saying life coach because it makes it sound like I've got shiny teeth and a microphone and. Well, I have actually got a microphone, but I ain't got shiny teeth. But like I'm some sort of like motivational kind of, you can be a winner kind of guy. And I suppose I am motivational for people, but in a very down-to-earth way. So I tend to just refer to myself as a coach. But I've been a professional coach now for like 13 years, I think. And I kind of stumbled upon it, to be perfectly honest. It was something that I was involved. I knew that after I kind of finished full-time football that I just wanted to help people. I knew I had some gifts and some talents around connecting with people, working with people, communicating with people. I knew that about myself even in my early 20s. So I started to do some youth work and I started to work with teenagers and their families and different things like that. And the coaching stuff, I stumbled upon it. I'd heard about it a few times, didn't really know what it was, sat in the pub with my mate, and said to him, do you know anything about this life coaching, Lark? And he said, oh yeah, I've got a friend who does that. I'll put you in touch with her. So he put me in touch with her. I had a chat with her. She tried to explain it to me. I didn't get it. I genuinely didn't get it. I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. It doesn't make any sense to me. Anyway, I just thought I'll sign up for a course just to see what happens here. Signed up for that. I kind of went to dismiss it, to be honest, mate. I was thinking, I'll go there. It'll be rubbish. And then I can just like forget about it and move on and find something else in my life. But within an hour, couple of hours of being there, I was just like, this is me all over. This is kind of what I'm meant to do. This is my thing. This suits me so well. So it felt a little bit like playing football for me as a kid just felt really natural. I did work at it and I did develop it, but there was something about it that just felt really natural. Like I could just do it. It was easy in some ways. And this felt like that as well. Like coaching felt easy. It felt natural. I had to work at it and I've honed my skills over the years and I've gained experience, but it felt really natural. And it just kind of went from there, mate. I just then got myself qualified. I set up my own business. I mean, looking back on it, I took some real risks, but you know, when you find the thing or the things that you're just meant to be doing, the things that really suit you really well, it's like you're compelled to make that stuff happen, to go after those things. So those risks that I took, I gave up my full-time job. I told everyone, right, I'm going to make a living out of coaching. A few of my mates laughed at that, thought it was absolutely ridiculous at the time. My parents were very like, oh, hang on a minute, you've got a young family, you've got to put food on the table for them. Is this going to be okay? And to be honest, mate, I've never looked back from there. I just knew that I was going to make it happen, and I went for it. And then all the other stuff that's kind of followed on from there, like I've written a couple of books. I told people for years, I'm never writing a book. Writing's not my thing. I don't like it. I'm not interested. I'm not doing it. And then I found myself writing a book, and then I wrote a second one. So and I started a podcast last year. So these things just kind of have just evolved, and as I've developed other things with it, and people seem to like the stuff that I do, so I just keep doing more of it. So it's just gathered momentum as I've gone now. This has been 12, 13 years and longer really in the making. And I only still feel like I'm at the beginning of things as well. I don't feel like I'm anywhere near the end of this. I just feel like I'm excited about what else I'm going to get to do, what other experiences I'm going to get to have, who else I'm going to get to meet. Even like being here with you today, Mo. I just love the way this comes about. You ended up on my podcast because we've got a mutual friend, and I'm like, it's just brilliant, isn't it? I love stuff like this. I love the way like the world just puts things in our path, the opportunities that it gives us. So it's been
the coincidence with us two. I mean, meeting that knowing the mutual friend, and then us two doing the podcast together, and now me being able to start my own podcast show because I had some amazing advice from you, which I'll always be thankful for. So yeah, it's I believe, as a religious person, I believe God does everything for a reason, and like you said, even that takes us back to your footballing career. You said even after your injury, you did feel a bit of a relief, and you did feel a bit better. I believe that everything is done for the best. I think it's horrible to have an injury and your career to be ended, but I do believe everything is done for a reason. And like me having this show now and having you as a guest, it's I never thought it'd happen. But anyway, back to what you've just said. And you did say you took a few risks and stuff, but how did you ensure your family that it was gonna be okay, and you were gonna be fine, and everything was gonna be cool? How did you do that? Because that must have been tough.
Do you know what? It's really hard to answer this because I don't think I can assure anybody of anything ever. In that sense, it's almost like and even myself, mate, I didn't know it was going to be okay. I didn't know that it was going to work out all right. Well, I didn't, in the sense that two things for me, mate. One is I've always got a sense of, like in this instance, I give up my job, I start a business. What's the worst that happens? Do you know what I mean? Like, generally, what is the worst that happens? The worst that happens is I can't pay my bills. I've got to, I don't know, live in a smaller house, or end up living in end up on benefits. That's the worst that happens, right? And I sort of think, well, if that happened, I'd just start again. I'd just roll with it. Like, that stuff for me doesn't feel that scary because I'm not that attached to stuff. Like if I lost my house or couldn't pay for my house, I'd just live in a smaller house. Do you know what I mean? Or cheaper. It's all right. Like, it's not, I don't have that sort of sense. Whereas for some people I've spoke to, the idea of that would be the scariest thing in the world. So there's two things with that. I'd be happy living in a tent. So I'm all right with that. That gives me a bit of a safety net with things. But then the other thing I think, mate, is I just back myself. And I don't mean that in an arrogant or cocky way. I just mean it in I reckon I'll just find a way to make things work. And I'd be prepared to do whatever I needed to do to put food on the table for my kids. So again, I'm not precious about that, or there's nothing that I think's beneath me. I would do anything if I had to do that. So I just kind of back myself that I'll find a way, that I'll make it work. I just believe there's always possibilities. There's always opportunities. So you can almost find a way to do anything. And also I don't have a very fixed, like some people in life, I did when I was a kid, right? And this is where it came from. So in my football, I was very fixed. Like there is where I've got to get to. I've got to be a pro footballer and I've got to do everything I can to get there, right? The problem with that thinking, though, is that life doesn't always work like that. Life has its own agenda going on, doesn't it? Different things happen for us. So these days, I'm much more in a place where I'm going to flow with life. So I might think, oh, I'd like to go give that a go, or I'd like to achieve that. But I'm more than happy for life, for God, for circumstance to also be involved. And it might direct me down a different path. So I used to live like I was building a motorway, like a Roman road, like a straight road to my goal. And now I like to live much more like I'm a river, where I'm just going to flow with the land. I'm going to find my way. I'm off towards the sea, but I don't know whether I'm going to double back on myself. I might be like rushing at some points and chilling at other points. And I might go on a bit of a surprising way. I might have to go around a few mountains. I don't know. So I liken it a bit more to that, mate, that I'm flowing much more with life now. And that takes the stress out of it. Do you know that almost I honestly don't look too far ahead. I really, really don't. I don't spend a lot of time thinking 5 years from now, because I just think, I don't know. I know where I'm off or where I'm sort of wanting to head in the next 6 months or year, maybe. I've got an idea. But I'm also prepared for the fact that life itself, that God might get involved and direct me elsewhere as well, Mo. So I'm all right with that. So I think there's a bit of a combination of backing myself and knowing that actually this isn't a fixed straight road either. This is all a journey, life is. And if I have to double back for a while, I'll double back for a while. It's really, really okay. And that just takes the pressure off, I think, mate. It makes it less of a big deal. And the worst that happens is I can't pay my mortgage. It's the worst that happens, mate. And what a first world problem that is. Do you know, there's people starving in the world and I can't pay my mortgage. Do you know what I mean? I'll find a different way with it. It's not as big a deal as our brains like us to think it is, I think. Can I ask you a question though, Mo?
Yeah, of course.
You said 5 minutes ago that you think everything happens for a reason. You think God works in our lives in that sense. What about you with your skin condition then? Because I'm curious about your attitude to this. I know we spoke about it a bit before, but it's kind of all right me sat here saying all this stuff about me. But I'm curious for you, mate, because you live with this on a day-to-day basis. Like how do you work those two things out, that you've got this condition and everything happens for a reason?
Well, that's a very good question, and I don't even think I know the full answer to that myself. I think I just wake up in the morning and I kind of tell myself that there's nothing I can do. I'm like this. There's nothing I can do. I could either just be negative, stay at home and cry all day about it, or I can get up and do things I want to do, go out there, start a podcast show or do these things. It's either one or the other. And I think at times, I have wanted to, I've felt at the lowest and I've just wanted everything to end.
Yeah.
But I mean, it is tough. And I mean, I think it's a bit like what you said. You're on a river and you're kind of flowing and you're just seeing where it takes you. That's like with me as well. I'm just seeing where life takes me day by day. I don't have a plan. I don't have anything planned for the next few months. I just wake up in the morning and get on with it. And I think that's all you can do. I mean, I've felt the lowest and it's not good to be down there. So, yeah, I mean, just getting on with it, I guess. It is unfair. I mean, life, sometimes I do see other people living normal lives and doing things that I want to do, like just waking up in the morning, having to do 6 hours of skincare, things like that. It does get to me. I do feel, and every day I think about it. Yeah. Every day I ask, why me? I do ask that. I won't, I won't sit here and say I'm full of positivity, because I ain't. But yeah, I just I do think these negative things, but just get on with it. Just get on with it. That's all you can do. Is that you can't really do anything else. It's not going to change anything. Being negative is not going to change anything, is it?
No.
So I mean,
it's amazing, Mo. Amazing, mate. It is. And the whole river analogy, I sort of think as well, like flowing like a river. but there's also like a load of boulders that get thrown in the river all the time. And
Definitely.
for me, I have some boulders, and for you, every day you've got a really flipping big boulder. Do you know what I mean? To kind of navigate and to move around, mate. And you do that amazingly well, mate. It's so inspiring. It really is, pal.
Yeah, and I think God plays a big part in it as well, giving us the strength I have, the positive, the positive attitude you have as well. I think God plays a big part in that, giving us that. Because I think without that we'd be at our lowest, and we'd want everything to end.
Yeah.
You wouldn't be an author, you wouldn't have your own show, I wouldn't have this podcast show, you wouldn't be doing these things if we didn't have God.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, mate.
Everything happens for a reason. But I mean, like, I wanted to ask, I really wanted to ask you this actually, because I read about you being a life coach, and I don't know what a life coach is, and I think a lot of the listeners and viewers, they won't know what a life coach is. So tell us, what is a life coach?
Brilliant, mate. Thanks for asking, because there's a lot of myths about this. Because sometimes the way it's presented, and sometimes even people who call themselves life coaches aren't actually life coaching. They're just doing motivational speaking or kind of inspirational seminars or things like that. And that's not actually coaching. So coaching really is this idea of working with another person in a way that says you're the expert on you. Like, you've got your own answers, you've got your own ideas, you've got your own way forward. The thing, like, Mo, if I was working with you, right, you know yourself better than anybody else in the world knows you. You know your situations and your circumstance. You know your wants, you know your needs, you know your hopes, and you know your dreams, and you know your fears, right? You know all that. And yet often we live in a world that just wants to be dishing out advice to people all the time. Well, you need to do it like this, you need to do it like that. And the way I work with people in coaching, and what coaching really is helping people to go from where they are now and grow and develop in a way that's absolutely right for them, but they're in the driving seat. They're the decision maker. So a lot of this sounds a bit weird, right? But I spend a lot of my working life in a place of not knowing. So I work with people, we have conversations with them, and I listen to them and ask them questions. But I work from a place of, I don't know what's best for you, but you do. So effectively, in a nutshell, as a coach, I help people find their own answers for life. I don't give people the answers or tell people what I think they should do. I help them figure it out for themselves so that they find the exact right stuff for them. And sometimes people think they don't have answers. They do. Given the right space, the right time, the right relationship, the right conversation, everybody I work with finds their own answers and finds their own way forward with it. And the brilliance of coaching is that when you're told to do something, when somebody gives you a piece of advice, most of the time you don't do it. But even if you do it, you don't really own it because it's come from somebody else. Whereas when you get to work it out for yourself, you are 100 times more likely to follow through with that. And it's absolutely perfect for you. It's like the just right piece of advice for yourself. So I'm a massive fan, and this is why I like coaching, because it's so empowering, because it puts people in the driving seats. They have to take ownership. This is how I describe coaching, as a partnership that empowers people to take ownership for their own development. That's my kind of stock standard phrase of coaching, because I love the idea that people have to take ownership for their own growth. They're not just following advice or following other people's ways of being, because we're all unique, aren't we? We're all completely different individuals. So we're all on different paths, all on different journeys. And what's right for you isn't right for me. And that's the problem with advice. I'm not saying all advice is rubbish, but probably 97% of it is. Probably. It really is, because it isn't right. It might be right for you, but it's not right for me. And I think what coaching does, and the way I work with people, is helps them figure out what's exactly right for them. And that's why I love it so much. That's why I'm a huge fan of it.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So it's more than giving, it's more than, see, I had it in my head. It was a bit like counselling.
So, yeah, I mean, the skills of a coach and a counsellor are quite transferable. So like I spend a lot of time listening and asking questions, which counsellors also do as well. And there's different types of counselling and slightly different types of coaching. But I think the real difference in coaching is that it's all about, where are you at right now? and how do you want to move forward? How do you want to grow and develop? Coaching is much more kind of now and future focused. Whereas, and this isn't wholly true, but often when it comes to counselling, it's a conversation about the past. It's a conversation about what's gone on for people, how they're feeling about what they've experienced, what they've gone through, etc., etc. Coaching is much more a conversation about the now and the future. So where you at now, how do you want to develop? How do you want to grow into the future? So that's the distinction between the two, really.
But I mean, what if someone doesn't know what they want in the future? Then what do you say? What do you do?
Well, it's really interesting this, because loads of people tell me they don't know. So we just start talking, and 5-10 minutes in, they start to know. Often we don't know because we've never had that type of conversation. Nobody's ever really given us that space to explore it. And a lot of times in our culture and society, we're just following the next thing, because we do this to our kids as well. We put them in school at 4, and then we basically send them to secondary school, and then we send them to college, and then a job or university. We basically put people on this conveyor belt. So they never have to really think through what's right for me, like really right for me. What do I really want out of life? And then we even tell people, well, you know, you're meant to partner up with somebody, and then you're meant to have kids, and then you're meant to do this, and you're meant to do that, and then you retire. And I'm like, whoa, hang on. That might work for some people, but for other people, they might want to do things completely different from that. But we don't necessarily give people the skills to really reflect, really think that through for themselves. So what you find often is people go, well, I don't really know. But then we start talking, and they start to realize they do know. So I say this to people often. You might think you don't know, but you do know.
But
You just don't know that you know, but you will soon. You'll start to figure out, and it happens all the time, that mate.
Yeah, I mean, it must feel good when you have someone there that say they don't know, but then, you know, after 5 or 10 minutes, you've got them speaking about what they want and stuff. You know, it must feel good that you've helped someone find their you know, their path and what they want to do, because, you know, I mean, it must help the person a lot as well, because remember, they come to you if they say they don't know, and then at the end they do know, and they've got it in their head, and they're like, actually, I want to do that. It must be a big boost for them as well.
Yeah, well, it's interesting this, because coaching is, you know, it does give me a sense of purpose. It gives me a sense of that I'm contributing to the world. It gives me a sense that I'm, you know, helping people in some way, and I'm doing it in a way that plays to my strengths. But what I really love about it is that whatever people have done with it, they've done. Like they've done it. I've not done it for them. I almost describe it as a little bit like I'm kind of their curious companion. I just go along, you know, metaphorically go along for the ride in their life while they make all the decisions. So it's a little bit like they're in the driving seat, I'm in the passenger seat, really. I'm just pointing things out, asking questions, feeding things back. But it's them that they're driving their life. So it's them that decides what direction, how fast or slow they go, whether they put the brakes on, whether they accelerate, all that kind of stuff. That's up to them. I'm just the passenger, effectively. But I'm a curious companion. I'm someone who reflects things back, points things out, asks questions to them, because most of the time people don't get those types of conversations. Even if we share a problem with somebody, it probably takes 5 minutes before they're giving us advice about something, even though they don't really get the situation. And I think there's something better about really helping people to understand their own situations and find their own answers. It's a brilliant way of working with people, and it's something I just want to get out there to as many people as possible, because it's not rocket science. You know, it's not, I mean, the more experience you get, the more skilled you get with it. There is a lot to it, but at the same time, the basic idea behind it is very simple, and most people can get hold of it and start to use it in some way. So I love the idea that people start to coach as parents, they start to coach as friends, they start to coach as bosses and leaders and managers, you know, all that kind of stuff. I love that. I'm all over that. Like, if we can get coaching conversations into everyday life, it's going to make a massive difference for a lot of people.
Yeah, so we, you know, that to anyone who doesn't know or didn't know what a life coach is, I think now they know it. Like myself, I didn't know what it was, and I was interested to know. But at the same time, you've got a podcast show as well, haven't you? like I said, the one I was on. So tell us how that came along.
So I suppose I'd thought about it a bit, but I didn't really know how to do a podcast, to be honest. I didn't even really know what podcasts, when they first came out, I didn't really know what they were. And then I started to listen to a few and I thought I could maybe do this. And I had a couple of mates who really encouraged me to do it. And then somebody who said, well, actually, we can do this podcast for you. We can make this happen for you. Because I didn't get all the technical bits of it, you know, in terms of like, how do you do it and all that kind of stuff. So I kind of, gave that to somebody else, gave that to a company to do, and they sorted that out for me. And then I just got on with, similar to what you're doing now, getting older people that I knew and having real life conversations with them. So my podcast is really like real people, real lives, real conversations. So I haven't done any of the, everybody that I've had on my podcast, I've met in real life in some way. Mm-hmm. Like in some way, I've got some connection to them. Most of those people I know pretty well. You were somebody who I'd met through, I chatted to through a mutual friend. So you was probably as far removed as anyone, Mo, from me that's been on my podcast. We kind of formed a friendship after that process. But most people are just like people that I've come across, people I know, my mates, because I really want my podcast to be real and normal and not about people just coming on to promote stuff or sell stuff or big themselves up. I just want to have proper conversations. So the way with my podcast guests, I mean, you'll know this, but the way with my podcast guests is I say to them, when you're on the show, when you're on it, just talk to me like you would if we were sat in a pub. And then other people can just listen into this because I want this to be a really normal conversation. But at the same time, I probably have what feel like to other people some difficult conversations. So I don't dodge topics. We cover some really tough stuff, but I don't find it that tough because I just like having conversations about some of the things that people don't talk about in life, but I think we should be talking about. So I'm just like, let's just talk about it. Let's just keep it really normal, really real, really down to earth. So it's just got that feel to it. And it's just gone from there. It's been running over a year now. It's a weekly show. And I just like doing it, mate. It's dead easy. I get on Zoom, record an half-hour conversation with somebody. I have fun doing it. Gets turned into a podcast. It gets released. Mm-hmm. I really like doing it. And people seem to be getting some value from it. And as long as people are getting value from it, I'll just keep doing it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, having a podcast is fun. I've always wanted more on podcast show. And I mean, like I said, everything happens for a reason. I met you and now, thanks to the amazing advice you gave, I've got this show now, and I've had you on there. It has been a pleasure speaking to you. But I do want to ask you one thing before we do say our goodbyes. What would be your message of inspiration to anyone that's feeling down at the minute? Because we are in tough times at the minute, and I think a lot of people might need that inspirational message. So what would your message be?
Probably 3 words, which is this: you are enough. Because I think so many people have some sense in our modern day world of not being good enough, not being right enough, not being rich enough, not being successful enough, not being a good enough mom or a good enough dad or whatever it is. And I think one of the best things you can do for yourself is recognize that you are enough, just as you are. You really, really are enough. And all that thinking about not being good enough isn't really you. It's just culture and society that have given you that toxic message that somehow you've got to try and be more or do more or achieve more or create more. And I think there's something beautiful about knowing that you're enough. You're enough. And it's all okay. I think it's really, really important.
Yeah, because I mean, like, no matter what you do in life now, there'll always be that one person out there telling you you're not doing it right, or, there will always be that one person. So that is a great message, actually. You are enough. I think to a lot of people that are listening, like John said, if you are going through anything, you are enough. And like we said in the episode earlier on, that everything does happen for a reason, and you'll get through it. Whatever's happening, you'll get through it with the help of God, and just you'll get strength, you'll get through it, and you'll be fine. I guess that's all we can say. Like I said myself, I've been through a lot, but being negative about it, it'll just make things worse. So it's just about getting on with it, and it's just about trying to stay positive, isn't it? So yeah, John, where can we find you? On social media, and so these listeners and viewers can find you and listen to your podcast show, because I've listened to a few episodes, and yeah, it's amazing. So
yeah, thanks, Mo. So I've got a website, johnborland.co.uk. I've got a company website, which is spaciouscoaching.co.uk. And then also my podcast, you can get hold of it on it's just called The John Borland Podcast. So imaginatively titled, took us ages to think of that. But yeah, you can get it on all the podcast channels, but also I've got a Facebook group called The John Borland Podcast. So if you want to join in there and get involved in that Facebook group, just search it on Facebook and ask to join. I'll let you in. It's also on Instagram as well, if you want to check it out there. And if you're on LinkedIn, if there's any, business people who want to link up with me on LinkedIn, just search my name, John Borland, it'll come up, and we can connect on there as well.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming on to the Live to Inspire podcast.
Thanks for inviting me, Mo. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure to have you on. Your story is amazing, mate, and yeah, it's been a pleasure. Thanks a lot, and take care.
Thank you.
Goodbye. Thanks for joining us on the Live to Inspire podcast with me, your host, Mo Yunus. Please comment, like and share to help build our global community.